The hospital corridors carried the quiet breaths of sleeping. Patients, doctors, and nurses maintained the silence of the night shift. On the first floor of the hospital, a young boy named Tommy lay in bed due to his rising fever. His mother, Sarah, had been waiting by his side until the early hours. One night, Sarah fell into a brief sleep. When she opened her eyes again, Tommy's bed was empty. She panicked and started looking around. She couldn't figure out where Tommy had gone from his room. Sarah quickly called a nurse, and they began searching for Tommy. Hospital staff became alarmed upon hearing the news. They scoured the corridors from end to end, but couldn't find Tommy. Tommy's father, John, rushed to the hospital and joined the search. Patient rooms, restrooms, and hallways were checked repeatedly, but Tommy remained elusive. They couldn't understand why Tommy had suddenly disappeared. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she asked, "Why did they take my son?" Just then, the hospital alarm blared, and all the lights went out abruptly. Darkness enveloped the hospital corridors, and Sarah and John clung to each other in fear. As they hurried toward the source of the sounds, a foul smell of blood filled their nostrils. When they finally restored the lights, Sarah and John were greeted with a horrifying sight. Tommy was standing in front of the morgue door, peering inside through the glass. He was pacing around the corpses on the morgue tables, fixated on one of them. Sarah and John, consumed by fear, entered the room. Tommy's eyes were still fixed on those inside, but Tommy's clothes were stained with blood, and he had fainted from a severe nosebleed. Tommy's blood and the gruesome scene shocked Sarah and John to their core. They would never forget the horrifying memory of that night in the dark hospital corridors. However, the nightmare took an even more bizarre turn. Tommy had awakened again, but his eyes were now hollow and black. In a hushed voice, he said, "They are here," and pointed to the bodies on the morgue tables. Fear gripped Sarah and John even tighter. Tommy's abnormal behavior left Sarah and John in shock. They didn't know what to do for a moment. Tommy's eyes shifted from the morgue table to the boy lying there. Tommy touched the cold skin of the body with his fingers and said in a deep voice, "They sleep here, but sometimes they wake up." With those words, the corpse on the morgue table suddenly opened its eyes. Sarah and John recoiled in horror. The pallid face of the corpse leaned toward Tommy's face and whispered, "It's time to bring your child back." Sarah and John were forced to confront a terrifying reality. Tommy seemed no longer himself. His body appeared to have merged with that of the corpse on the table, however. Determining the identity of that corpse remained a perplexing mystery. Hospital security personnel and doctors witnessed the terror in Sarah and John, but none could find a logical explanation for this situation. Tommy's body exited the morgue door of its own accord and began moving through the hospital corridors. Sarah and John had to follow him, for they could no longer predict where he would go. After a long journey, Sarah and John found themselves standing in front of a massive door. As it opened, a cold draft and darkness emanated from within a dark tunnel. Tommy's body entered the tunnel and disappeared. Sarah and John hesitated for a moment, but decided to enter the tunnel to rescue their son. As they ventured deeper into the tunnel, they were surrounded by eerie sounds and shadows. The tunnel seemed to lead to a world beyond the realm of reality. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah and John stood before a colossal door. When it swung open, they found themselves in a dark and terrifying place from centuries past. It seemed like a world ruled by an ancient spirit.